Greetings, Summoners. Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Battle Spirit Saga video. And today we have the top 16 breakdown for the Tulsa Grand Open, which just happened this past weekend. And woo, I got my Pro Tour invite, which is great. But you know, a lot like when I was playing Flesh and Blood and won the the largest North American Road to Nationals tournament with Chain, it was like, hey, just play the busted deck, get an invite, right? So it's very clear that you just play the best deck in format, put in a little bit of work, and you get an invite. It's just that simple. Well, truth be told, because of everything that I tweeted about or talked about in the Discord, like an XYZ things that went wrong this past week, I didn't actually get to do any testing. So the only time that I played with the Axebiter deck was at the Gen Con event, which, again, smaller pool, new set, all that stuff. But, you know, my number of games going to this event, I think, was like 10 total with Axebiter. And yes, I'm not going to turn this video into the overall Axebiter depths conversation piece that it should be. I'm sure most people would rather hear from the Grand Open champion about that in detail, but I am going to speak from my own personal experience with it. So I will admit this was one of the worst events to play in quite some time, strictly from a format health standpoint, and the number of games that I played or rounds that I played that were strictly non-games, either due to matchup considerations or who just won the depths minigame, and that is kind of where the format is at. So I am very thankful I got my invite this past weekend by some miracle of squeaking in, but I will absolutely not be playing Axebiter for the Monroeville Grand Open because I'm not going to do that to myself. And when I was walking around and talking with other players, especially those who were at the top tables, and spoiler, they were either playing Axebiter decks or purple decks otherwise and try to have like 8 sideboard cards for Axebiters, the overall sentiment of the game was just not positive, right? By round 3, people were like, well, I kind of just want to be done. But obviously, we're playing for money. We're playing for the Pro Tour invite. We're playing because we know that Axebiter and depths are a problem, and we want the data to reflect that. And spoiler, it did. And it's just like you feel obligated to play through this event for reasons that are just not like coming out and having fun and playing Battle Spirit Saga, right? Obviously, there's going to be money. There's going to be the prestige and invite and all that stuff that's on the line. But when you don't even get to have enjoyable games, I think there's something to be said about the format health that needs to be taken into consideration. So, yeah, again, I will absolutely not be playing Axebiter in Monroeville. I'm sure I will be doing terrible because I'm going to probably play something green, or I might just play a yellow deck, right? And I don't think yellow is playable at all in this format from a strictly will you top 8 with it discussion, but you could probably squeak into top 32 with it and get an invite. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 1 or 2 that did. So again, didn't want to spend too much time up front with this part of the video because I know that there's a larger conversation that needs to happen around Netherworld Depths and Axebiter, and that's either going to be its own video. It's going to come up in the Champions Corner with the Tulsa Grand Champion talking about it and their experience and how they feel about it. Again, because it probably means a lot more coming from a purple player than me, who is just someone who's just trying to create content for the game and have fun. And I just really hope that something does happen with it down the road. I will say kind of like the one redeeming factor for this weekend was actually getting to talk with Tim Riviera, who you might know has won a previous Grand Open, has continuously been doing well in events, and then John Tata from True Duelist. I had the pleasure of connecting with both of them and talking about their experience, and they got paired up against 2. They were both playing a variation of aggro decks, and they said it was the best games of Battle Spirit Saga that they've played in a really long time because of how that matchup went. So there is still a very good game under all of this, you know, discussion and content to digest, as it were, from the list that we've seen from this one. And then, of course, I'm throwing the Pro Tour up here as well, just to kind of show like, hey, here's the timeline of it. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm obviously very pro for banning depths. I'm very pro for either limiting or restricting completely Axebiter because of the unfun play patterns that happens. And then also we saw this weekend that a red-white Axebiter list did in fact top. So I hope both get banned. We'll see what happens. Again, at this point, we did get the dev update on Friday in case you missed that. So we do know that Bandai is looking at the results from this event, and we'll look at the results from the rest of the Grand Opens. So fingers crossed, this means that we should see a ban before the second Pro Tour happening later in October. And of course, we do have the lore set, to be fair, which could be a grand shakeup to the format. But honestly, at least for me, I think like Tokiwa is the big winner. And then there's like some cute stuff that you can do, but in terms of overall meta impact, right, I think it will be lower than what even EX01 was with the elementals. So there's like the one card I think you just slap into mono green aggro and it's great, and you go from there. So long intro out of the way. All my disclaimers. Again, didn't want to go too far into it and let it just be its own video if it's going to be its own video down the road. You know, it was great seeing everybody. I love the game when you get to actually play, you know, other decks and stuff. But it was a bit of a trying weekend to say the least. But all that out of the way, let's get into the first list with our champion, Zach Bell, or Zactac, as we may know him in the community Discord. So the first thing I gotta say, as this got to see the finals play out, and as I was watching some of the other games or hearing people talk about it, right? This is a list that I could not play to save my life. I'm gonna say that up front. I am too dumb to play this list. Zach piloted absolutely out of their mind, and you can tell that this is a list that says, look, I want to play purple, and I'm gonna have just all the possible answers I can for depths and target that very specific matchup. And even when they were able to go all out and test into it and have all this counterplay to it, they still did struggle against it in the tournament, but they did win it all at the end of the day. So huge shout out to Zach. And again, I won't go over their list too much just because we are going to invite them to the channel and they could talk about it a lot more than I could, at least at a high level. But generally speaking, right, we have what was called the purple tempo, or, you know, Camelot Knight tempo, as the Camelot Knight is the mascot for this list. But in theory, at least, right, it does play like a lot of those lower to the ground mid-range lists. And then with the addition of Thorn Prison, it allows you to find those turns where you just want to get in a couple more points of chip damage. So green was a huge addition to this list in particular. I really loved, there was a turn in, I believe it was finals, if I remember correctly, where Worker Ant-Man, because he was able to go unchecked for 2 turns, it lined up a spot where they could Dream Bomb aggressively, keep 2 guys on board, and still pressure damage. And it was a huge turning point in the game. So I think Worker Ant-Man in general is one card that needs to be explored in more lists like this because of those plays that it opens up, even if it's not the most consistent thing. But I think anyone who's played any amount of green, you already know that the Worker Ant-Man's the sauce for it. And it's something that we are going to see a lot more of in the future, I'm sure, as well. So love the list. Again, this is something that I would just have to sit down and really grind out the reps for, which is exactly what Zach did, right? They put in the heart and the effort to really try to say, like, I just need to figure out this problem that is Axebiter, and how do I handle it? And again, Netherworld Depths, Rotting Swamp being a huge card draw engine that you could get to make sure you keep refilling your hand. But this is one that is really trying to focus on, if they have the suppression, you know, we have the Dream Bomb. If they're just trying to wall up in low on cores, the Thorn Prison's good for damage. So it's a really tricky deck to pilot, to say the least. You know, then we have King Vulture, because we are the Depths minigame. We have the Joker, which is going to be just against anything, even like if there was one that you might find non-Axebiter kind of control decks, right? It's just unblockable damage. Anytime you need that 1 extra chip damage, it's just very good for that. Bishop, so you can have the full curse combo. Greatwood Castle Keep, really great for shutting off elephants or other problematic when destroyed stuff. Fun Q&A update about that is we did get the absolute confirmation now that it only stops spirits in play. Does not stop Nexus anymore, does not stop Burst anymore, does not stop Immortal. It's literally just stuff like Elephant when it has the when destroyed on the spirit itself. Core Drain for some red, and then Reanimate just for funsies, but I would have to, you know, inquire a bit more about what that's there for, and something we can talk about in the next video. Moving on from there, we have our Pro Tour champion landing that sweet second spot here with Caleb Albert's Axebiter list. They are just doing insane, right? They won the online event, they won the Pro Tour, and then they came in second in Tulsa. And the thing I gotta say about Tulsa, you know, it was a terrifyingly competitive field with who showed up, and like all the Pro Tour, you know, competitors, the Grand Open grinders, people who are coming from like Flesh and Blood and other games who are either have won RTNs, you know, Pro Tour stuff like that, like or qualified for their Pro Tour. Like, it was a stacked venue, and I had to go play against Khalid round 1, which was just not a great way to start my weekend at all. But I mean, I remember seeing everyone there, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of really rough matchups that you could hit here. And of course, not to shy away from the unknowns, right? Because with all these events, it's impossible to highlight all the good players that are coming up until you see their names pop up a few more times, because there was also quite a few names that I just personally don't recognize. And I hope that we get to see more of them in future events, so we get more of this name recognition coming up and see more of these repeat tops, like, Caleb and Tim Riviera and the True Duelist guys like Alex Blandon. So I really love that we're starting to create a story around this, because we are seeing more people travel to these events and, hopefully having a good time when they're playing in them. So with the purple-white Axebiter list, this is one that we've seen time and time again with a couple different variations. And just looking over this in terms of like, what do I see that's a little bit different from the tech choices? The 2 Gregamar, the 2 Black Jaguar, the 2 Elk, the 2 Enterprise main. There's like a lot of, I am just going to see the mirror while also having an edge for a couple other things. Like, one card I think that really did well this weekend that I didn't expect as much was Black Jaguar, just in a variety of cases. Like, obviously, it's really good for the mirror at times. You just want to bottom the elementals. The same reason why Pterosaur's decks are playing Leon now, to blow up the elementals and destroy their when summons. But it turns out like that's still just good against some aggro decks. If they try to go wide, you stabilize, then you bottom too, right? It's also good against yellow, shocker, because all our guys are so weak anyway. So I really do like the nod there for the Black Jaguars in particular. And then, of course, 4 Burning Force, 3 Dream Bomb being the mandatory inclusions there as it was. And then the sideboard here being a lot more of kind of what we'd expect to see. Gregamar, you just really have to respect white aggro. King Vulture, you're playing the Depths minigame. Derm Dyna, more Mirror Hate, Rocket City, draw engines, right? Very typical for what we've been seeing. I think Axebiter is kind of well developed at this point, where you probably have like 43 cards, maybe 44 cards, and like the last 6 is kind of whatever you want to do with it sort of thing. But I would not expect this list changing meaningfully anytime soon. So huge shout again to Caleb for a 2nd place finish. And again, just being on an absolute crushing it the last few events. And again, from the online event to Pro Tour Champion to 2nd place here. And they're, from my home state as well. So I have to assume they're going to Monroeville as well, because it's a 4-hour drive for us. And like, why wouldn't you sort of thing, right? I cannot wait to see if they're able to top again with Axebiter and just continue on this insane run. And yes, I do have to add the disclaimer. So when I do these videos, the intention of them is that we highlight the best performing deck within the archetype, and then the rest of the list will be available on Eggman's website, which again, comment will be pinned down below for that. And yes, there was other Axebiter decks. And technically, you could make a case that these count as other archetypes because, well, they're not quite just like the white-purple Axebiter deck, but they basically are. So I'm not going to get into this because as someone who just had to play a lot of Axebiter mirrors over the last weekend, I am very tired. But I at least want to give a shout out for the effect that people were out there and saying, okay, well, what if I don't want to do white purple? Let's shake it up a bit. Let's add a little bit of spice, to the list. And obviously I'm biased with this one because it has yellow, but I gotta give a shout out to Anthony trying to make the yellow version of it work, because there is some cool stuff. Like if you really want to go full meme value, and I know he'll appreciate me saying that on it, but like if you can totally live the dream, you get to do like Exhaust Nexus Black Jaguar plays, which is like, haha, got your 5K sort of thing. And that's really cool. But when I talked to him, he's like, you know what? The Exhaust Nexus just wasn't that great of a pick this weekend. So he ended up siding some of them out. I believe he said every match at the time that I talked to him in one of the rounds. But that's just how it goes sometimes. Exhaust Nexus is still a really good card for being able to stabilize against some of the more aggressive strategies, especially if they do the oops, go wide, you crack an ice shield, and then hit them with the Exhaust Nexus. And also, just the Tin Man Soldiers being a 5K blocker is pretty good, it turns out. But what's better than a 5K blocker? A 6K blocker in the red version of Axebiter. And then going all the way back to Terry's version on the purple green with the ramp and having still like depths and stuff like that. We saw some of that in the Gen Con meta where people were kind of experimenting with it. You have the Peggy Scions as well making an appearance here in the first 2 lists. So definitely a little bit of variation that we can see there. But at the end of the day, it's still, it's depths, it's Axebiter, it's suppression effects. And here's the other parts of the deck that you play because they're just good cards, right? So not too much to say about that, but I thought as a good reminder, because I have been getting a few comments about, oh, why didn't you talk about the 7th place duplicate deck, right? It's because I want to just not have these be 45 minutes long, just for my own sanity. And then also just because I want to help, drive more traffic to Eggman's website. Because again, I'm not a full-time content creator. I just do this as a hobby. He is. He needs the clicks. He needs the, ad revenue and all that stuff. So, hey, go check out Eggman's website. All right, moving on from there. Top 4, we have Jacob Snodgrass with the Nemesis list. And I gotta say, this is the list that I was having the most fun with going into testing for Tulsa. But the Axebiter matchup was miserable unless you high rolled it, is what it felt like. In terms of like what angle did I like for purple decks the most was just like Turbo Maduke and Hope. But ultimately, Nemesis just wasn't landing exactly where I expected to. And again, could be pilot error. I'm very curious to see how Jacob's Swiss pool went, just to see what they got paired up against. But the value you get out of Lamorak and Nemesis, and again, I said this in the 2 videos ago now, I think, like, I just love Shadow's archetype from set 1. It is by far my favorite, so I was really happy to see this list in top 4. And, if I was going to play something at locals, and if I was going to play something also, post-Depths ban, this list is just fine. Like, you automatically have to play the 4th Black Lance, sure. You have to play Rotting Swamps, sure. But you still have so much ungodly draw and value engine out of purple that you don't care if Depths gets banned, right? You still have enough things to like churn through your deck. And obviously you're like, oh, but the level 2 is relevant at times. You still have access to Curse if you really want it. So this is a list that you swap out for Depths, you swap in for Rotting Swamps, and you go, okay, this is good now. And you could still play this exact list, and not feel bad about it. But that overall, again, I think Black Lance is a card that would immediately go up to a 4 of in the majority of mono or, slight splash other colors, just because it is very, very good. And Black Lance just loves to be paired with Maduke anyways. So love this list. It is, again, typical of the purple mid-range style of stuff that we've seen, leading in from set 1 up to now set 2, just being able to refine it a little bit more. I got to give a special shout out to Devilish Prankster Imp. Love seeing that card in here as well. That goes all the way back, the throwback for Team Ice Wall to the launch event where it was in the aggro list and got a couple people. So really cool to see that little guy back as well. And then just, again, another Reanimate, the Thorn Prison, just being good for removing some blockers when you need to. Just a lot of good value purple cards that we've come to all know and love. Flamefish I love here as an additional addition for the sideboard for aggro matchups, because again, it's going to stall them out, and then you can just pop it with Nemesis, right? Why not? Get all this value, kill your guy that has 4K power or less with the effect. Seems pretty great. And then, of course, just a myriad of things for either the Axebiter matchups, purple matchups, or just another Thorn Prison in the sideboard being a good card. I think after this weekend in particular, once the matches got on camera, people really got to see the power level of Thorn Prison, and to the surprise of nobody, it's a very good card. Again, I would say that I knew it was going to be good. I just didn't know how good, and it turned out even better somehow. Moving on from there, we have top 8. The hero of the weekend, Tim. Thank you. For anyone that knows, I am entirely horribly biased. I so badly wanted to play a green deck at Tulsa, but I knew that it was not going to be a good meta pick. Again, a slower variation with like Armor Tree and stuff like that. But Tim got it there for us on a green aggro list, squeaking into top 8 with, one of my, I wouldn't say favorite card because like Thorn Prison, I think that's it. But like, this is just green good stuff, right? You have Worker Amman, love that. Emerald Pincer, I love it in the Armor Tree list. And then the Horn Fortress Elsamoth is the thing that I loved about Blade Beast. And this deck just lets you go there as well, right? At the late game. And there was a time in top 8 where if he had 2 turns to draw Elsamoth and he would have gotten the win. But if he sets up a board that says, hey, if I get this guy, I slam it down, I attack and immediately tap 4 of your things. And you have to have an absolute Ice Shield or a suppression effect, or you die here. And like, that is a really strong effect that you can push out of green. The problem is it does require a lot of setup. It's going to be very weak into purple and red. But instead, if you focus more on this, I want to be Lord of the Ground, be aggressive, always force my opponent to be behind on cores and behind on resources that they can't afford to set up some of those other plays. You can get there and you can get away with it. And then Leaf Wolf just being able to extend the damage time and time again that we've seen can get in some of those extra points. So I don't think that we're going to see another green list top anytime soon. Again, unless it's a variation of this list that someone runs to Pennsylvania, which is the next Grand Open. But I want to try to invite Tim on the channel just so they can talk about it and have like a, not Champions Corner style video, but more of like a, hey, what worked for you in green, right? What was your like have a green workshop basically and talk about what they loved, what they didn't love, what was good, and all that stuff, and try to help the rest of the community, kind of come together and build this type of deck so that we have a green option for the meta. And I know at the end of the day, you're going to say, well, it's just another variation of like white aggro where you're just trying to end the game as soon as possible or do cheeky tap or bounce effects, and it's really not all that unique or exciting. You know what? At least for now, can we just celebrate that green got into top 8 and that at least, for who knows when yellow is going to come back, right? This is still a deck that I think people are going to have to respect, and it can also be very difficult to play around with when you consider the Scoop Owl or Mr. Scoops. That really messes up with some of the blocker math or attacker math that your opponent might be banking on. And just to have that flexibility in a deck where it's like, you now have to respect these 8 Swift cards that I have, right? Because 4 Scoops, 4 Leaf Wolf, really just creates some more interesting dynamic in how you want to sequence your attacks. Whereas white aggro is like, okay, I extend my turn, bounce this, turn everything sideways, regain for game, right? So I do like that. As these aggro decks start to develop a little bit more, there's at least more decision points you can have in green, and the sequencing matters a lot more, which is really, really cool. And again, these Swift cards just being absolutely insane for what they're able to allow. I really hope we get to see more of this in the future and that someone else is able to, kind of crack the code, as it were. However, when we think about green's place in the meta overall from a more mid-range or even control standpoint, yeah, you probably have to do Axebiter, Armor Tree, Depth style of deck, and that's just not fun. But hopefully if we do see some changes to the format, some of those a little bit slower green decks can find their way in one way or another. And then going on from there, we have Jesse Smith with the green purple mid-range, and this is an interesting one because it's technically under the umbrella of core control, but it's not exactly, because it has like the ramp pieces and it has some really cool tempo plays you can do with like Pincer and Thorn Prison out of nowhere. So I didn't know what to properly classify it as because, at the end of the day, you're probably still winning a lot of games off either curse combo or just green tempo side of things. But I thought this was a really cool list. And it is one that we saw similar to the Gen Con list as well. Again, I think green purple is a natural combination a lot of people really loved. But I am again expecting to see a lot more of this in the future when we look to, how can we really utilize the portions of green to help out where purple can be lacking a little bit. And then also shout out to Aldi's the starter deck card because it's a 5-drop, so it goes off Beldegor as well. So, I really do love the extra tools that we have here for Beldegor as well, coming back with like Pincer, right? It pushes the damage. It's a 4K. If it dies, it gets back Beldegor. Like, that's really cool, right? So I do like more of this style that, shout out to Tokiwa as well, being a straight miser copy here. I do love the flexibility that you have in terms of how you want to build out this deck. And then again, Worker Ant-Man, just kind of bringing it all together, ramping you those extra cores, letting you get into things like your Curse and Bishop combo faster can be a very valid strategy. So I really like this list as well. I think this is another one if people don't want to play just mono purple, which again, no problem not to. I think there's a lot of, fair play to be considered there. But if you want to spice it up a little bit, gotta give it credit to Jesse with their top 16 list. And then of course, what's a top cut video without pterosaurs, right? How could we forget? So shout out to Kevin Maladano with the top 16 here with pterosaurs. Very similar to the Netherlands list, but also it's one of those things that, we see the 4 Thorn Prisons here because you're trying to catch the Axebiter decks before they can stabilize, but pterosaurs just getting heavier and heavier into their spell counts, it seems. And then shout out to the Leon again, because sometimes just blowing up some elementals is all you need to do. And it's kind of like a that's that at the end of the day. So pterosaurs, I think, is one that we've seen time and time again. There's not much to be said about this overall, but again, huge shout out for at least getting a red list into the top cut, especially when if we went back to the Netherlands list, right, there was quite a few pterosaurs that we ended up seeing, but I think with the first Grand Open, a lot of players just wanted to play their comfort decks, and then we got to see the shift towards the Tulsa in terms of, okay, what does the best deck in the format look like, and how does the meta kind of warp around that? And well, we saw the results of that. But sometimes you just hit the right pairings, or in my case, I did lose to a Gagano player because they're at I think it was game 2 or game 3. There was like triple Gagano Sortosaurus. I'm like, yeah, I'm dead. You got me. And like, that's just the hands that Pterosaur can get, right? Sometimes. And because I have to be so mindful of other matchups, and because of the mirror I have to be so mindful of, right? I can't just throw core drains or additional core thefts into the deck that would then help me with the Gigano Rex, or again, just having Curse Dragon main. So I think you probably have to like change some numbers if you expect more of the Pterosaurs in the field overall, because nobody respected Curse Dragon all this weekend with the Axebiter list. And maybe that was fair because they saw the Netherlands list, and that's where they were going off of like the more white based. And also, I just personally like, I like Curse Dragon as a splash, but like getting all 4 slots can be kind of rough in my opinion. So maybe it was just a soul read, right, that they got me for not having Curse Dragon in my main board. It was in my sideboard, but didn't come in at all this weekend. Actually, now that I think about it, the only thing I sideboarded all weekend long was my Gregamars and my Enterprises. So that can give you an idea of what my matchups were. And then, of course, the last spot here squeaking in is white aggro. So yes, technically 2 aggro decks in top 16. This one, of course, being the white variant. This is one that I think most people are a bit more familiar with, right? All the free stuff, and then and Strike Back to give you additional spirits to attack with, and Dream Bomb just to remove problematic blockers that have suppression effects on them, or again, just Axebiter as you might expect. And then Black Jaguar here again. If your opponent tries to set up a turn where they want to double block, double draw, you go, no, sorry, those are both gone, and now I'm attacking for free again. So very, very, strong situational card, but for the way that white aggro plays out, I think it is a absolutely wonderful inclusion here. So again, huge shout out to all summoners who made top 16 this past weekend. And once again, huge shout out to Zach for his championship role in the Discord now. So again, if you're not in the community Discord, and by community Discord, I mean the Battle Spirits Saga community Discord, make sure you check out the link in the description. And with that, we have our top 16 breakdown. And then just next to it, I did the top 8 as well, just to say like, hey, yes, 5 of the 8 top 8 lists were in fact all Axebiter. So we'll have to see what this looks like going forward. So yes, I was so happy that I got to go. I got my invite. It was great connecting with players, but I think the player sentiment for those who are going to, at least in North America, for those who are traveling to events, thinking about playing competitively, we are all begging for a change leading into the Wave 2 Pro Tour. But I am going to be now freed of it, as it were, and I get to go play some green decks now again. Looking forward to the next Grand Open and just playing something different. And also as a bonus, not going to time every round or almost every round would also be a huge benefit. I forgot how taxing that certainly can be. So with that, happy Monday, everybody. That is our top 16 recap. Once again, the lists are available on Eggman's website. And of course, I have a lot of content that I need to catch up on or dig into, so I need to figure out what that looks like. So look forward to it. But otherwise, make sure to stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.